Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Sharma. And yes, you can see from my background, I am indeed, that's my property. I live on a farm in rural Australia, and that is indeed a kangaroo sitting there. They are, in fact, in plague proportions in Australia, even though they're our national emblem, we're not allowed to cull them. My presentation today is indeed on rural hospital general ward nurses' experiences of workplace violence and aggression by patients and visitors. And I would first like to acknowledge my supervisory team as a PhD candidate, Professor Porter, Professor Olasoji, Dr. Joseph and Dr. Raymond, and to acknowledge that my research was supported by an Australian Government research training program and supported by the university. I'd like you to first imagine a teacher discussing nursing as a career with a teenager. The student may say he wants a career where he can help people, and the teacher may say things like, it's a rewarding profession. You might be assisting to deliver babies or resuscitate a heart attack victim, or be the only person able to provide some comfort for a patient in their last few hours of life, all of which is true. What's also true, but may not be mentioned, is that most hospital nurses experience some form of violence and aggression from patients and visitors every single year. Workplace violence towards hospital nurses is rampant. Studies have shown that each year up to 95% of nurses will be the victims of verbal aggression, and up to 80% will be the victims of physical violence, most often from the people they are caring for. I'll first clarify the definition of workplace violence that we used in our study, because there are many. And this is a widely accepted definition from the ILO and the World Health Organization, which refers to incidents where staff are abused, threatened or assaulted in circumstances relating to their work. So that's verbal aggression and physical aggression as well. Several other terms are used interchangeably, such as client aggression or occupational violence and aggression, or type 2 workplace violence and aggression, which is aggression towards an employee from a client. A challenge in the study of workplace violence is the subjective interpretation. A verbal insult to one person may constitute verbal abuse and be reported, or the same insult might be quickly dismissed by another. Workplace violence is, of course, a global issue, and it's a growing concern across most industry sectors globally. The healthcare sector, however, consistently ranks as one of the highest in terms of prevalence, and of all healthcare workers, nurses are overrepresented, largely due to the time spent with patients and the intimate nature of some of the tasks they perform. Most offenders are patients and visitors, and smaller numbers are reported by peers, managers, and other clinicians. Considerable research has been undertaken on these clinical areas, which are historical hotspots for violence and aggression. Not surprisingly, workplace violence in emergency departments often results from patients who are affected by alcohol and drugs or substance use or mental health issues, or those who are just generally impatient with the long wait times. Cognitive impairment is known to contribute to workplace violence in all three clinical areas, particularly mental health and aged care units. Typically, this research has been conducted in city or metropolitan hospitals. However, workplace violence is increasingly being reported in general hospital wards, which is where most nurses work. The motivation for the study was my own observations of the negative impacts of violence on nurses when I was CEO of several rural health services in Australia. And so the aim of the scoping review was to describe what is known about those experiences. It's important to look at workplace violence in rural health services because there are significant differences compared to city or metropolitan hospitals. Firstly, it's more difficult for nurses to maintain their privacy, as they are more likely to know their patients and visitors or be known by personal connections, family members, sporting clubs, schools, etc. This has shown to cause nurses to be reluctant to report workplace violence incidents if they think that the offender knows where they or their family members live or what car they drive. And the hospital is often the major employer in town, so it's difficult to switch jobs. In addition, some smaller rural hospitals don't have security staff nor the resources to manage workplace violence, and they may be located in towns without a police station or a police presence, particularly after business hours. And of course, we know that rural communities have greater health inequity with higher rates of hospitalisation and poorer access to primary healthcare services. Compounding this issue is the fact that it is more difficult to recruit and retain nurses in rural areas due to perceptions of lack of facilities, education and socialisation opportunities for nurses and their families. This slide shows the process undertaken in our scoping review, which I'll skim over in the interests of time. However, importantly, our research found that there was no studies particularly focusing on rural hospital general wards. Our findings were grouped into 4 themes, and the negative impacts are interconnected, affecting not only the individual nurses involved, but also their colleagues, other patients and visitors, and the healthcare sector more broadly. The findings demonstrate that physical or psychological injuries caused by patients and visitors contribute to the nursing workforce shortage, which is predicted to be up to 9 million by 2030 across the globe. Workplace violence can also cause adverse outcomes to other patients and cause increased healthcare costs. The first theme was prevalence. And as you can see from the slide, up to 96% of nurses experience verbal abuse every year, and up to 80% experience physical attack. And our research found that the number of incidents is positively correlated to increases in general ward patients waiting for a bed in a care facility, such as an aged care home or a dementia care facility. By contrast, the number of violent incidents was found to decrease as the number of planned admissions increases, such as in elective surgery wards. Therefore, the highest number of incidents was found in medical wards, where there is likely to be a longer length of stay. There were some demographic associations, with more experienced nurses reporting less workplace violence. However, the studies were unclear on why this is the case. It is thought perhaps that the more experienced nurses accept violence and aggression as being part of the job, that it's become normalised because it occurs so often. By contrast, male nurses reported incidents more often. However, it was suggested that on occasion, male nurses might be allocated to known violent patients as a quasi-security measure. It's important to note that all studies acknowledged underreporting, which leads us on to the second theme. So the lack of formal reporting, as the slide shows there, has been shown to be up to 80% of incidents, which of course makes the previous prevalence slides understated. It's widely acknowledged throughout the literature. Reasons were fairly consistent, with studies of nurses often citing a lack of time and that online reporting systems were cumbersome, and it is now considered to be part of the job. The fear of blame and reprisals is of particular relevance in rural communities, where nurses are more likely to know their offenders, as I mentioned earlier. Nurses perceived there was a lack of post-incident management support, and so therefore the reporting was considered to be pointless. And violent incidents involving patients with cognitive impairments such as dementia were often not reported because the nurse considered that the patients were not responsible for their actions, which then presents a conflict between the nurse's duty of care and their personal safety obligations. The next theme was the contributing factors. And of course, shortage of nurses means delays to care, and that causes increased frustration when things like pain medication are not delivered on time. There is a shortage of beds in the specialist clinical areas, as I've mentioned, such as dementia care or mental health units, and that causes an increased length of stay in the general hospital wards, which contributes to increased workplace violence. Again, we found a perceived lack of management action, particularly a lack of consequences for offenders, And we know that if there is zero tolerance in your local coffee shop, they can refuse to give you coffee. But in a healthcare setting, in a public hospital setting, we don't have that option. So then the next theme was negative psychosocial and other impacts. And psychological harm is often more severe and can have longer lasting effects than physical injury, from things particularly such as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and burnout. Workplace violence against nurses has been shown to cause premature exit or intention to leave from either the acute hospital ward settings or the industry altogether. Studies show that the threat of violence often has a greater negative impact than physical violence. Again, it's an issue of concern in rural communities. Adverse patient outcomes also are more likely to occur in a ward where there's been a workplace violence incident. And these are shown up in things like medication errors and an increased risk of falls. And of course, the true impact of workplace violence is often masked when nurses' response is to self-medicate or to take sick leave or resign without reporting the incident. In turn, this contributes to the global nursing workforce shortage, which can then potentially create a vicious cycle. If you have less nurses, you have a lower workplace morale and higher turnover, which means more delays to care, which means longer length of stay and more workplace violence. So you can see how that can become a cyclical issue. And of course, increased workers' compensation, insurance and employment costs all increase the cost of healthcare to us all. So what can we do? What can be done to reduce workplace violence? Well, there's various interventions that have been tried, such as duress alarms, zero tolerance policies and aggression management training have all been found not to have any effect in the reduction of the incidence of workplace violence in hospitals. We need to better understand the lived experiences of our rural nurses to help inform policies to reduce the risk of workplace violence and improve post-incident support. And this is the focus of my PhD qualitative study, which is currently in progress. I've collected data from 3 rural health services in different areas and different socio-economic environments, and I expect to publish later this year or early next year. And the findings, as indicated on that slide, we expect to inform development of policies to mitigate risk and improve the post-incident support to address workforce shortage and workforce sustainability. And in doing so, we hope that we will be able to encourage people, like that teenager from the first slide, to consider nursing as a safe and rewarding career. Thank you for your interest in my research. I'm happy to take questions, and I have a couple of pages of key references. Oops. Thank you.